Week 4 of the NFL season starts right now on the Turf and Touchdowns podcast with episode number 34. We are looking forward to the Giants and the Cowboys, another divisional face-off, and one that means a little bit more than maybe we expected at the start of the season. The Cowboys have not started fantastically, they're 1-2. The Giants also have not started fantastically, also 1-2. But Luke Elder alongside Tom Collins. Quietly, Tom, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's a lot more interesting than I thought it would be at the start of the season, that's for sure. The Cowboys are obviously being pinned as this team who've got a good chance of having a Super Bowl run, and the Giants were pinned as a team with no offense and no defense. But actually, they've played a lot better, and the Cowboys have played a lot worse than many people predicted. It's a tough game to assess, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm looking forward to it a little bit more than I thought I would be as well.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Look, the Giants looked dreadful in week 1. The Cowboys looked fantastic in week 1, and then they've not looked fantastic ever since then. But that's still to come. Last week, we were in New York as well, but my goodness, we had a frustrating game. The Jets took on the Patriots. We both landed one bet apiece, and we both wanted Breece Hall to just do a little bit more. Just a tiny bit.
Yeah, Breece Hall was our downfall, which I didn't think we'd be saying because obviously Breece is so brilliant in every game he plays. He usually hits overs and he's usually the linchpin for the Jets offense. It was a weird game. I stayed up until around half time, which is about 3 a.m. UK time, and then I called it quits because at that point the Jets were clear. It looked like it was going to be a blowout, and I think there was already 24 points at half time, and my bets were Breece Hall overs, and Breece currently had around 20 yards, so I thought that was a good thing. And then the under 38 and a half, and I thought, well, that one's dead. So I was anticipating waking up to 1 out of 2. Now, that did happen, but it was the other way round. Somehow, Breece managed to just get 29 receiving yards when I bet the over of 30 and a half, which is very, very frustrating. And there's more of this to come when we talk about the weekend slate in the next podcast. More frustrations from my end. But fortunately, the under did hit because the second half was arguably the most drab half of football I think I've ever seen. So yeah, I struck at 50%, but it was a very frustrating game.
Yeah, I was 1 from 3 with Mike Williams hitting the over. Breece Hall, I needed one more catch, and then he would have landed. And Ramondre Stevenson looked good, was playing well, then he fumbled, and that's it. Get to the bench. You learn your lesson, Ramondre Stevenson. We're going to go for Antonio Gibson, which was good. But let's move on, because we have got another football game this Thursday night. The Giants taking on the Cowboys, where the Cowboys are currently 5.5-point favourites. At least they absolutely were the last time I checked. Yes, still 5.5-point favourites. Over-under is 45 points, and the Cowboys are 2-5 favourites on the money line. Look, the Cowboys, for all intents and purposes here, Tom, they should be winning. They've just really not convinced this year.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, week 1, they completely blew out the Browns, and the Browns were favourites. So I was thinking maybe the Cowboys are better than I thought. Well, I thought they were already going to be pretty good, but maybe they were better. Obviously, Cleveland were terrible in week 1, and they immediately went right down the bottom of the power rankings. Since then, the Cowboys seem to have just self-destructed. I don't know what they were doing against the Saints. In the first half, they were basically not even on the field. The Saints were just throwing deep balls to Rashid Shaheed, and it was touchdown. Kamara could do whatever he wanted. And then last week, we were kind of anticipating a fight back from the Cowboys. I obviously backed the Ravens, so I didn't think they would win the game. But after 3 quarters, they were down 28-6, and the Cowboys looked to have nothing in the locker. Now, the positive for Dallas is that they fought back in the fourth quarter, albeit I don't know how much of that was Dallas now actually playing a lot better and the Ravens still playing to the level, or the Ravens just dropping off. I think there would have been quite a bit of the latter there. But still, they're coming into this week 4 clash with momentum, and they need to fight back because this is a Dallas team that many people are expecting good things of. It's America's team, and they're currently 1-2. When it comes to the Giants, they actually looked okay in week 1 despite losing to the Vikings. The Vikings have proven to be a pretty good side since. Then against Washington, they pushed them all the way in week 2, and Washington have won and beaten the Bengals last week. So, those 2 games, I think the Giants played well. And then last time up, they almost bottled it against the Cleveland Browns. It was kind of the opposite from what we saw with the Cowboys against Cleveland in week 1. But, this is a team that's got Malik Neighbors, and how can you completely write them off?
Yeah, exactly that. In week 2, the Giants lost to the Commanders. The Commanders put 21 points. Like, oh, cool, 3 touchdowns. No, 7 field goals. They didn't concede a touchdown. It was a ridiculous game. They looked okay against the Browns last week, albeit the Browns are just a hideous team at the moment. They are terrible to watch. Did you see Lamar Jackson's interview after the game when they beat Dallas last week?
I did, yeah. He
Not
was
happy,
not
Money.
happy.
No, not happy with the coaching. So I'd like to have, maybe continue playing, but that's not what we did. So
Yeah.
issues in Baltimore, but regards to Dallas, they at least finished hot. However, they couldn't get the job done. I think we both think Dallas will win this game, but from a betting standpoint, Tom, I'll let you go first because you're focusing on the touchdown side of things and you're taking one player from either team. If you give us your first.
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking two bets here. Neither are going to be on the actual match outcome, whether that be handicap or money line. Usually, I like to include a bet like that. As last week, I included the under. The week before, I think I included a handicap play, but I found this very tough. So, just two player props. They're both going to come in the same market, but I'll give you one to start with, and that's the obvious one. And it's going to be CD Lamb anytime touchdown at 10 to 11, which is a fair price, if not relatively short, considering it's an anytime touchdown market and you don't really know what's going to happen there. CD Lamb has played against the New York Football Giants on 8 occasions since he was drafted into the league. He has 6.5 catches on average per game for, on average, 90.3 yards. He's a guy that the Giants often struggle to cover, as per many teams in the league, and that Dallas likes to go to against New York. He's just a constant thorn in their side, basically. He has 4 touchdowns in the 8 games against the Giants, which tells you that 50% of the time Lamb is finding the end zone in this fixture. Now, the current price of 10 to 11 suggests he's got a 52% chance of making the end zone, if you like your statistical side of things. So the price is a touch short from where it should be on trends, but you have to factor in that the Cowboys are desperate to get points on the board and win games. And when they're in that mindset, why would they not go to their star receiver, the guy they rely upon, the guy that they paid the big bucks for? Lamb's only had 2 targets inside the red zone so far this year. That's going to change this week. And I really like CeeDee Lamb to get in the end zone and score a touchdown.
Yeah, I like that. I fully get that with CD Lamb. He should be back to just being the guy. He was out targeted by Jake Ferguson last week. We'll get to that in a moment. But I'll go into my first one. I'm going to go for on the Dallas side of things. But I'm going to go on the running game, which at the moment no one really knows what's happening in regards to the run game in Dallas. Rico Dowdle, I think, is about to take over, though. Over 39.5 rushing yards is a very, very low line if you think Rico is going to take over. It's 10 to 11 at the moment. Look, he took over the backfield last week. He had 8 attempts compared to Ezekiel Elliott's 3 attempts. He also had 1 extra carry over Zeke against New Orleans. Both of those games were in negative game scripts, so neither of them were going to be sort of massive amounts of carries. The line for actual carries at the moment for Rico Dowdle is 9.5. That's higher than Ezekiel Elliott as well. So even bookmakers are expecting Rico Dowdle to take over. The Giants have been vulnerable against the run. That's part of where you want to beat them. And Brian Robinson for the Commanders didn't get into the end zone, no, but 17 carries for 133 yards. Aaron Jones in week 1, 14 carries for 94 yards. As I say, he outsnapped Ezekiel Elliott last week, 37 snaps to 15. He averages 3.8 yards per carry. That's also higher than Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not asking him to be fantastic in this game. I'm not asking him to go out and get 100 yards. Just over 39.5. I think that's a very low line. And if you are taking the view, like I am, Tom, that Rico Dowdle's about to take over this backfield, I think my first bet could be a quite lenient one. So Rico Dowdle over 39.5. What's your second?
My second one's also going to come in the anytime touchdown market. It's going to be a bigger price than CD Lamb was. And this one is a little bit more speculative. The thinking behind it is that if CD Lamb gets into the end zone, which I think is definitely going to happen, then you should be able to at least make your money back if you split stakes across my 2 anytime touchdown selections. This one is going to be for the Giants, and it's going to be Daniel Jones, the quarterback. He's around 11 to 4 right now to get an anytime touchdown, which is a big price. And I'm going early this week with my long shot, rather than saving it for the Sunday slate. As bad as the Cowboys' defense has been this year, they have allowed 28 plus points in all 3 games, so it's been pretty bad. Their pass defense has actually looked A-OK. Now, I'm not including against the Saints in this slot because it felt like it was Derek Carr just doing whatever he wanted in that game. And I don't necessarily think it was the defense's fault, but just the receivers had an incredible time of things. Shaheed was uncoverable. And then when they were running the ball so well with Kamara, it just opened the play action up. And I don't really blame the pass defense for that. It was just a load of rubbish the whole game for Dallas. The other 2 games for Dallas, they've been okay against the pass. So I'm not too keen to bet Malik Neighbours in this spot, for example, for the Giants, and I'm not overly keen for Wan'Dale Robinson either, though I do think he will hit the over in receptions. Therefore, I want to bet someone who can score touchdowns off play action passes, and I think that could be Dan Jones because he loves to run the ball, especially when he bootlegs out of the pocket, and that seems to be something that Dan Jones likes doing. Jones has rushed the ball 19 times in 3 games this year. That's over 6 times a game for anyone that likes to do averages, and that's for healthy yardage each time as well. He's not afraid to use his legs. It's very much part of the game plan for him. And he's actually quicker than many people think he is. He's actually averaged 6 rushes per game against the Cowboys in his career as well, which is very identical to what he's done so far this season. So I think you can anticipate at least 6 runs from Jones, which gives you 6 chances to get into the end zone at least. He has 13 rushing touchdowns to his name in just 5 years in the league. Again, that's a positive. That does include 7 rushing touchdowns 2 years ago. And given how Dallas allowed Deshaun Watson to make plays with his legs, not through the air, and Lamar Jackson to run on them last week, it just feels like Dan Jones is going to be part of this offensive plan. Whether he's going to get into the end zone, I'm not sure. But 11-4 is a very fair price for a guy who does like to run the ball. And the Giants are going to have to score some way. And if Malik Neighbours can't do it, I don't really see another option. So I'll take Dan Jones at 11-4 as my long shot in the anytime touchdown market.
I remember week 2 when I put up Daniel Jones to do something positive, and he had a good week, to be fair. I got mocked relentlessly by you, and now you're like, oh, we love Daniel Jones, he's amazing.
No, right, I need to clarify. This is Daniel Jones through the air using his arm that I didn't like. With his legs, absolutely fine by me.
See, I remember Daniel Jones, like, home and hose for like an 80-yard touchdown the other year, and he just fell over.
I do remember that as well. He was running. I said he runs faster than many people think he does. He was running too fast for his own good that day.
He was running faster than his legs were going.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't hate the Daniel Jones angle. I had a similar look towards him on the over on rushing yards. I think he's going to panic quite a lot as well, which also for a quarterback means you're going to run a little bit. His over-under for actual rushes, by the way, is 6.5 rushes. I don't hate that on the over side of things, but my final bet of the two is on the Dallas side of things once again, and it's on Jake Ferguson, who, as I mentioned earlier on, he took over regards to targets last week. He missed week 2. He had a quite enough week 1, but Dallas absolutely blew out the Browns. He's over 40.5 yards in the receiving department, 10-11. I think that line is very, very low. He returned from injury, as I say, instantly led the team in targets, receptions, and yards. He was the focal point last week on their comeback, per se, almost, against Baltimore. The Giants aren't tested against the top tight end either. They were 4 for 29 against Jordan Akins. They were 4 for 62 against Zach Ertz for the Commanders. Against Minnesota in week 1, they were 4 for 42 against a couple of their tight ends, Josh Oliver being the main one. I like to think that Jake Ferguson could step up once again. He was 3 for 15 against Cleveland in game 1, but as I say, they dominated that game. It was a game that they didn't really do a great deal in after almost the first quarter, the sort of second half side of things. So I think Jake Ferguson is back. I think 14.5 is a very, very low line. So I was tempted to go for him to score a touchdown as well, but I'm just gonna rest on things, Tom. I'm just gonna take Jake Ferguson over 14.5. I honestly, 2 lines I put up, I really like both lines.
Yeah, I don't disagree with either, to be honest. I actually would, from a personal point of view, like Ferguson to do well, just purely because he's in a couple of my fantasy leagues, not as my starting tight end, but on the bench. And it's given what we've seen so far with the tight ends this season, injuries, players underperforming, it would be quite nice for me to have a good backup. So I'd be hopeful that Ferguson does hit your over, and obviously Dowdle, if he does take over the rushing mantle, then he absolutely could hit the over as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a look at Thursday Night Football. If you did enjoy this brief look at Thursday Night Football, we'll be back on Sunday to preview the main slate of games. Do subscribe, leave a comment down below your thoughts on the Thursday Night Football match between the Cowboys and also the Giants. We're also going to have a horse racing video focusing on Belmont at the Big A, the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, coming out in a day or two's time. Probably be up actually around the same sort of time as this video. If you are a horse racing fan, go check that over. But please do subscribe. We will look forward to seeing you in a future video. Until then, stay safe, look after one another. Goodbye.